concept of perfection. So when you look out into the world, uh, the cosmos, the earth, the sea, there seems to be a intertwining perfection to all of it. And quantum mechanics talks about this, which I won't get into because I'm not Deepak Chopra. I don't pretend to know something I don't know anything about. Uh, but but I want to talk about it from my own realization in perfection. What perfection means to me. So perfection to me doesn't mean good or bad or I get what I want. So perfection to me, when I look at the world, especially after realization, is more like one of those old timey watches, and you flip it around to the back side and you take the back piece off, the timepiece, and you see all the little levers and pullers and strings and attachments and everything that makes that watch tick. And it's all perfectly in its place, exactly where it's supposed to be, performing its duty perfectly to make the watch work and to make time read correctly. That's more like the way that I see it now. When I was younger and I was heavily depressed and I was going through a lot of stuff and trying to work my way through this, I had a bit of a victim sense of the world. I had given everything over to what I felt like I had given everything over to God, and I felt like He had forsaken me. And I would say things like, since that first awakening, it's like I want to be close to you. I want everything. I want to give you everything. Why why are you not giving me answers? Why am I so lost? Uh, so it was a victim sense in that it was me against the world, and I didn't understand why everything was so against me when I was so earnest about being close to God, as I would put it back then. And over time, I learned, and with further realizations, that just simply isn't how it works. But I held that as a thought and a belief for a really long time, and it put me at odds with life in a way that was very brutal. Um, and it was very much an egoic, selfish, why can't I get what I want? Like, why isn't life doing what I want it to do? I shouldn't, this shouldn't. Um, but after realization, I saw like this perfection, like Dzogchen would say, the great perfection. I saw this field. I call it a field, but it's just a word. Before any concept, this thing was seen directly that holds all of this, and it's a pure, pristine neutrality that allows everything to be, and it functions perfectly. And the only reason it's not seen to be functioning perfectly if it's seen from a small section of it that wants something that it's not getting. In so many words. It's a complicated topic, and I'm just trying to talk about it. Um, but it was really the view that changed. So, seeing this undifferentiated, unconditioned Rigpa, as Dzogchen would call it, seeing that's what I actually am, changed a whole lot less grasping. Um, it was seen that morality rises and falls within it. And it is in total acceptance of anything, including suffering and joy and selfishness and victimization. In the great perfection, it allows all things to be done. So, as you notice in the world, people talk about fractals, fractalization, and you go in closer and there's more fractals. You see that. You see it in, there's a Netflix documentary about going down into the plant world and going down really, really close into how things work. And it all just works perfectly in sync. I can't remember the name of that documentary. I saw a long time ago. And in space, with Earth, the sun being the perfect distance to not burn the Earth up and all that. Now, whether you believe in materialism or idealism or that consciousness is all there is, in what I'm talking about, in the way that I'm discussing it, philosophy doesn't matter. Whatever the philosophy doesn't matter. In your raw experience, whether you're suffering or not, and how you're treating and being treated is what matters. In the video I'm talking about. So so the way that I'm talking about it is from here on, I'm just going to talk about it from the perfection of you and how this personality is made and life is made for you to see. So in this perfection, it does not mean you get what you want. It does not mean things always go well. But it does mean that things are perfectly balanced. So for instance, let's break it down even more. So one thought is this field manifesting as itself. And the flavor of meaning that is put into the thought, as in the content, not the context, but the content flavors how the projection is experienced. So if you have conditioned thoughts, which become beliefs that are conditioned towards negativity because your parents were negative people, or, well, let's just stay with that because it's simple. Then upon further conditioning, without awareness, without looking at it, negativity will perfectly come out of that conditioning because that's what's making it up. Now, I was a black sheep in my family, and the conditioning that I grew up with that started to come upon me was negativity and anger and violence and lots of victimization. And I was a black sheep in my family, and I didn't want that. For whatever reason, there was an awareness there. And odds are, if you're watching my channel in any capacity at all, you are probably one of the black sheeps as well. I don't know how you'd end up here if you weren't, unless it was just pure accident. But I don't believe in accidents, really, so you're probably a black sheep. But anyway, so like morality throughout time changes, and some things that were immoral years ago or were considered moral years ago would now be considered immoral. We don't burn witches at the stake anymore. We do other things, and the technology for violence has changed, but the conditions for how that comes about has changed and is always changing. So in your own life, if you're feeling like a victim, or you're feeling like the world is against you, or you're feeling like God has forsaken you, like I felt, I would say that you're not looking closely enough at the building blocks of reality. If you are victimizing yourself, I can tell you for sure you're not looking close enough. Because just like that finely tuned watch, reality in its enormous intelligence is giving you exactly what you keep thinking about. And I'm not talking about manifesting Ferraris and shit like that. That's not what I talk about here. I'm talking about more like merging with the currents of reality instead of trying to get something out of it. So when you start to notice the building blocks of your thought system, which also is part of the building blocks of the emotional system, as you want to call it, and you start to see how your algorithm was built from the conditions of parents, environment, various other things, and you see that suffering that it's caused, then you can skillfully look and see very closely the machinery that's making up that experience. Because your personality refreshes itself every moment. The conditions that make it up are not solidified. And that beautiful perfection, that great unconditioned, allows the condition to take place. But those conditions can change any moment with proper clear seeing, which is what I talk about a lot on this channel and in person with people in the Zoom and all that. You don't really have to change anything. There is no doing here. When you open the watch face of your algorithm and you see how it's made, you can see how your parents gave you certain thoughts and belief systems, whether they're religious or spiritual or just secular, like I am a negative person, or nothing ever works out for me, or why is the world against me? But I'm telling you, you must look closely enough to see how that's built. If you just throw your hands up and say, nothing ever works for me, then you are believing thoughts. And the center of all that belief is the identification with a separate individual who's doing all of that. So then you begin a spiritual search. And you say, I'm going to find this out. I'm going to solve this. Now you've created an expectation of achievement or ascension or whatever word you want to use. But the realization itself destroys all that. The realization about enlightenment is kind of that there is no enlightenment. You see that the building blocks of what this is was never tainted at all. And that's what you really are. And the algorithm that keeps rebuilding itself every moment is filled with thoughts that are made of this unconditioned ground, groundless ground. And they keep coming to existence and leaving just as soon as they came. All one movement, not separate. The arising and the falling happen constantly and without stopping, just like a symphony. The symphony of your mind or your algorithm is being rebuilt without stopping. But you seemingly solidify that with thinking the same thoughts and the same beliefs and having the same supporting emotions over and over again. But with clear seeing and examination, that can change. And it is not that you, the doer, that you think you are, changes anything. What I saw in my realization was that when you look close enough at the way those thoughts are organized into beliefs that make you suffer, when you look close enough and see that that is making you suffer, that algorithm will drop that suffering and readjust itself. That leads to less suffering, less grasping, And then if you look back close enough at the unconditioned and you see there never was a separate self, but it was always the unconditioned conditioning itself, binding and unbinding itself constantly in this amazing dance of perfection. Then you can really let go. There can really be letting go, surrender. And then there's a move into immediacy where that separate self no longer needs to be a victim, no longer needs to have things its way. It wants what the universe wants. It wants what the unconditioned wants because it's staying so close to immediacy that it doesn't need to go into the past or the future. And with that ungrasping, naturally comes new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing. And then that extends into new ways of doing, new choices that happen, not by a choice maker, but by reality itself making new choices in the moment. And then over time, your algorithm changes, just like a desert landscape. When you put like a camera on a desert for a long time, they do that sometimes. You notice that the hills of the sand change slowly as the conditions change. The sand blows around, the hills take different shapes, and it continually happens. That's how I saw my algorithm operating. And I saw it through reality's eyes, through the realization. And there was a giant change in how I went forward after that. So there's a ton less suffering now, a lot less grasping, and things are kind of seen as perfect. So you say, well, what about war? What about children being hurt, dogs, cats being hurt? It's like, yes. The conditions that created that, in wherever part of the world the problem is, are, I would say, the algorithms of the nations, of the people that make it up, the thoughts and beliefs that keep operating the same way, that allow what we call bad things to happen in different places relatively, like what Buddhism might call the two truths. Two truths doctrine, I believe it's called. What I'm trying to say is that the building blocks that make those things possible up are perfect. They allow this to come to pass as an appearance. The content they are filled with the ideas, relatively creates good outcomes or bad outcomes, suffering or not suffering. So if you're out there and you're crusading for something, make sure that you're awake first, or that you're working on it. Because if you're out there in the world with your deluded ego thinking you know what's best for everyone, you're probably going to cause a lot of suffering. You have plenty of work to do here to wake yourself up more and more. So in the unconditioned, a look behind the scenes is everything is perfection. Everything is operating exactly the way it should be to manifest the results in the world that manifest, suffering or not suffering. And as Buddhism would call skillful means, you can apply that without much judgment, without much grasping. And you can make your world and your immediate experience a much better place just by taking responsibility for your own algorithm. And that will expand in your immediate environment. And in my view, that's all you need to do. I think that's perfect.